What's up? This is Rob Gronkowski, and you're watching the Moneyball Channel.
Welcome to Moneyball. It is my pleasure to have with me today Mr. Marty Biron. How are you, my man? Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing great. You've got a great looking hat. I got to get one of those like that. I decided to go, goat head, black and red today. I had that on Sabres Live, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be good. So we were balancing it pretty good.
Truth is, this is my 11-year-old son's hat. And, he doesn't wear it often. And I said, I'm taking that thing because I think it's really nice looking. And
it's a great looking hat.
Check this baby out. I brought out on this is a special occasion. The Sherwood Tom Barrasso comes out.
Yes, man. And the goalie sticks are nothing like this anymore. Like the very sharp heel, the way the blade and everything is built. That is, man, you wouldn't even be able to find a stick that resembles this right now. The thickness of the paddle, the way the shoulder and the shaft meet, guys all have their own ways. It's very rare that it's that straight and that cut. So.
I was going to say, even the lack of curve on it, look at this thing, man. There's nothing to it.
No, and Barrasso did it often because he used the backhand a lot. So he didn't want a big curve because he used to switch it up and do the crazy backhand with his curve. So, but he wanted to be able to use, so he was different. He was a right catching goaltender, but he flipped it over and shot the puck lefty. So he would go the huge backhand if he could. So he was kind of on backwards a little bit.
I always wanted to be Tom Barrasso. So I would be the forward version of Tom Barrasso. The guy was like a hero to me. And he was I think he's so underrated, man. Right? Like Tom Barrasso had some crazy good numbers. I think he won a cup with Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. He won with Pittsburgh. He actually did pretty well in Carolina as well. Buffalo, obviously, he was, the rookie of the year. Tom Barrasso, the biggest thing with him and why people loved him so much is because he was absolutely, an aggressive type of goaltender. Yeah. The stick would come out and all of it. And no, actually, Tom Barrasso won the Vezina after they made. So he was voted the best goalie in the league. So that's an 83-84.
So it was like Barrasso was this 6'3" aggressive giant. And then Kluche would come in and he was like 5'7", right? It was,
Jacques, totally different people. Jacques is like the nicest, easygoing type of guy. He was, So I grew up in Quebec City, and Jacques Kluche played in Quebec for the Nordiques as well. The amount of goalies that were shared, like Clint Malachuk played for Quebec and Buffalo, Jacques Kluche. So that was, and then Bob Sauvé was actually a guy that turned to be an agent, and he was in the Quebec area. So I knew a lot of what was going on in Buffalo, but you're right. Jacques was the nicest, easygoing guy. Tom Barrasso was the most focused, kind of, mean. Just crazy kind of person. So it was totally different.
Tell me about growing up in Quebec City. First round draft pick for Buffalo in 1995. We'll talk more playoff hockey and make this more of a fun conversation. But just for, just to start out and kind of, I had mentioned off the air, I said you're kind of a Buffalo legend, which I absolutely think that you are. I mean, it's you, it's Dom. And if you're old like me, it's Barrasso, right? Those are the guys that everybody remembers. And then your infamous fight, of course, no one can ever, it's just classic, man. I remember right where I was, how you remember where you were for no goal. You remember where you were for this. And I remember right where I was for Marty's fight.
I remember where I was for no goal. I was a few rows behind. And I was a black ace. So in the playoffs, when the Rochester Americans are done, some prospect and some guys come up, and I was one of those players just in case of injuries. So I was about 10, 15 rows behind the goal where it happened. And then I walked down to the locker room after just to see Lindy Ruff come out and be angry and yelling at the referee. So that was scary. And then I remember exactly where I was for the brawl because, yes, I was getting punched out by Ray Emery at that moment. And I remember what I was doing after the brawl because I was having pizza and wings in my full gear in the locker room watching the rest of the game because I got kicked out. So that was great. But you're right. You do remember some of these moments. My first Bills game, I went to a Bills game for the first time in the 99-2000 season, I believe. And I remember where I'm sitting. I'm at the other end of the stadium, and the Bills have they need a touchdown to win. Last second play, Doug Flutie looks over to give the ball to Thurman Thomas. Thurman Thomas went the wrong way, so Flutie bootlegged into the end zone, scored a touchdown.
Tell me about.
But anyway, growing up in Quebec City. So it was my brother and I. I'm 3 years older than my brother. So I was born in 77. He's born in 80. My dad was, simple construction worker, but worked extremely hard, like his job. And then after hours and the weekends to afford like our hockey and baseball and my goalie equipment. I mean, I never had new goalie equipment. It was always used because we couldn't afford it. But, but he would do the ice rink in the backyard. We would be out there all the time, skating until our toes were frozen, and we'd come in. I took some liberties on my brothers where I would hit him in the snowbank. He would go home crying all the time. And then he got bigger than me and he got taller than me. He's about a 6'7" like monster that played in the NHL too.
Is he that tall? Is he that big?
Oh yeah, he was 6'6" and a half, 235, 240 when he played in the NHL. So, and he's probably bigger now. But there was a time where I was taller and bigger than him, and then he passed me, and then I quickly shut up. I learned to shut up and not like get into him. But it was very, we were huge Quebec Nordiques fans growing up, the Peter Stastny and Michel Goulet. And, there was some tough years, really, really tough years where it was first overall pick after first overall pick and the Eric Lindros saga. And then finally they get good again, just in time to leave to Colorado and win in Colorado a cup in 96. But we were a sports family. My dad played softball and bowled and he did all these, played pickup hockey, beer league hockey and whatever. My mom was, playing a lot of sports. So we were a sport family. That's what we did. We never went on vacation because our time away was sports. It was, we would have a hockey tournament, a baseball tournament, a soccer tournament. That's what we did. And so, 95, I get drafted by the Sabres, which also coincides with the time that the Nordiques left to go to Colorado.
Yeah.
So, for me, it was an easy transition. Well, now my team is Buffalo, and I kind of fell in love with the organization, the people in the organization. I got to play at 18. I got to, come here to Buffalo and love the city, love the area, decide to stay here. So it became very simple. It became a very easy transition from, I feel like Quebec City and Buffalo are very similar in ways.
Are they? Yeah.
Different in others. Like Quebec has this old, established downtown that is lots of tourists and the tourism and all of it. But the suburbs are the same. The suburbs are great schools, hardworking people, very welcoming, very loving. And I felt like that is what I love so much about Buffalo. So the transition was easy. I felt like I fitted right in, other than the French speaking and the French accent, but everything else was good.
How did it's great hearing that story, because I've actually never heard that, broken down that way with you. How was that assimilation? I mean, obviously now you still have, the accent, but were you speaking predominantly French? Did you grow up 100%. Speaking French?
I mean, I grew up, English in school was like, the Spanish that most people in high school learn. You learn a little bit, but you're not going to go out all of a sudden in a Spanish speaking environment and be like, oh, I know what's going on. No, you're just understanding a few things. In English classes in school, they used to ask us to watch a half hour of TV in English a week. And on Monday nights, I would turn into Monday Night Football and I watch the first 30 minutes of Monday Night Football. All I could tell is that, well, you know what? It's like a sporting event. I could have put it on mute. It would have been the same thing, right? Yeah. So I remember when I came to Buffalo, I'm 18 years old. First training camp, and then my first, few games. Mike Wilson and Jay McKee used to have an apartment on the waterfront in the city, and I went there a couple of times, and they're like, oh, let's order a pizza or whatever. Marty, you want to order a pizza? And I'm like, I ordered something that came back so disgusting. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, guys, you can't act like I didn't speak that much English.
Right.
But then I learned, I got better. I ended up marrying a local girl. So then it became like everything was in English, right? Like 95, 98% of my life became in English, which I balanced back, with a lot of French into it. But yeah, that's really how my development and my language learning became, just part of everyday task.
Do you still speak fluid French? I mean, is it easy to
I do a lot
off?
of media work in French, a lot of radio, a lot of TV, which I love because it has made my French so much better.
Yeah.
You can't go on TV, especially when your mom and your family's watching, and go out and butcher the French language and throw in a bunch of English, expression or whatever. No, and I had a great producer my first year when I started doing French TV. After the show, he would send me an email and say, "Be careful, you said this today."
Okay.
And he's like, "I hope I'm not stepping on toes." And I'm like, "No, please help me."
Yeah, you wanted to hear that.
It's not that. Look, your first language is always going to be your first language. You know, when I cover some of the Montreal Canadiens with RDS and TSN and radio. So when there's a game that I'm home and if the Canadians are playing, I'll put it on the French just to hear. Like my good buddy Mark Denny does a fantastic job with RDS, and Patty Lalim, former Sabres goaltender, he does it with TVA Sports. You know, I listen to them and how do they use different, expressions to be able to
just to stay up on it,
to guide and to be able to understand what the new things are doing.
Was Hockey Night in Canada always in French then?
Yes. So on Saturday night, there was La Soirée du Hockey. So the hockey night, but it wasn't in Canada. It was just the hockey night, the Soirée du Hockey. And yes, it was very popular, but it was very popular because a lot of the Montreal Canadiens games were on, but I hated the Canadiens, but I had to watch them on Saturday night because that's the game that was on.
It's funny you say that. I remember Don Cherry and the Canadians being on, I would tune it almost every Saturday, right? They were like they had to be on. Good segue into the playoffs. I know you're covering them like crazy, and it's there's been some wild games, but there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing like playoff hockey, right?
Yeah. First round especially.
Right. And you go through the season and, obviously we know what's going on with Buffalo. We're in the drought. We don't need to go over that and beat the team up and everything else, because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to have a good time. And it does stink. I really do. The fans deserve that hockey. But if people are not tuning in, like say you're a Sabres homer and you're just a Sabres nut, and then you stop watching after Buffalo season's over, you're missing out on the best hockey in the world. And personally, the West Coast hockey to me is that fast move. I love that West Coast hockey. Who do you think right now, man, is at their peak, their pinnacle, goaltending wise and everything else? Who do you think who's it look like to you?
Well, goaltending wise, we've got a lot of different storylines in the playoffs because the best goalie all season was Connor Hellebuck. He's probably been one of the worst goalies in the first round, despite the fact that he advanced. So it'll be interesting to see what he does against Dallas in the second round. A lot of people say, oh, well, he exercised a lot of demons by winning in the first round against St. Louis. And, that overtime and second overtime, game 7 was crazy, and he was better. They say he wasn't that much better. The puck hit him. So I'm going to have to really pay attention and watch how he looks in the first few games against Dallas to see where is Connor Hellebuck's at. I think it's all mental. And the game, we all know, is very, very mental. Everybody can skate. Everybody can shoot. Everybody's in good shape. Find a hockey player that is not in good shape. That's impossible.
Right.
But about how do you approach it mentally? How do you process the information? How do you bring the best out of yourself? That's the thing. And I think Connor Hellebuck, when it gets to the playoffs, it's tough. Sergei Bobrovsky, on the other end, when it gets to the playoffs, all of a sudden he's lights Vezina
out.
Bob, right?
Yeah.
There's been some seasons where Sergei Bobrovsky has not been Vezina Bob, but the last 3 years, playoffs, Stanley Cup Finals, they lose 2 years ago. They win last year. This year, they beat Tampa in the first round. I think Sergei Bobrovsky has been the best, despite the fact they lost game 1 to Toronto. I still think he's been the best in the playoffs so far, but we have a lot of weird goalie, basically things happening with the Edmonton Oilers. Calvin Pickard is winning 5 in a row. Like, that's just crazy. So there's a lot of crazy goalie stories going on.
And, with Dallas, I'm glad you brought that up first, with Winnipeg playing Dallas, because Ottinger has been, he was kind of, I guess, going in, a few guys that I spoke with, he was kind of the favorite, to be the best goaltender in the playoffs, right? Maybe just his streakiness or whatever. But I feel like, and this is just my opinion, playoff hockey was always about the best goaltending. And as of the last few years, you're not seeing like the 2-1 games, you're not seeing as many. You're still getting some high scoring games, and where I feel like, does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, I feel like the goaltending has taken a little bit of a dip in the playoffs. Is that fair to say?
You still need the best or one of the best goaltenders to win in the playoffs. So the game has evolved more into, okay, let's continue to push. You're up 2-0. Yeah. Don't sit down like it used to be and try to win it 2-0, 2-1. You got to get that third goal, and you got to keep pushing. So that is a big thing when it comes to goaltending. The other thing is save percentages are down. And a big part of save percentages being down this year and in the playoffs is the fact that because of gambling and because of all the prop bets and all of it, the league is now auditing every single shots, every single period, and there's less shot on goal. When it used to be, this looked like it would have hit the net. It's a shot. It's a shot. All of a sudden, the shots are 37 to 32. Now, at the end of the night, the shots may be 32 to 23. And you're like, oh, well, the game is still 4-3, but the save percentages have gone down. I looked at this year in the playoffs. The goalies that have the highest save percentages are, to me, the goalies that their teams have been playing really well in front of them. Freddie Anderson, Carolina. His team has played really well in front of him. Logan Thompson, Washington. His team played really well in front of him. And then you look at the bottom of the list. You've got Connor Hellebuck. You got Andrei Vasilevsky. You got Linus Olmark. You got Sergei Bobrovsky, Darcy Kemper. These are all goalies that have had fantastic seasons.
You'd think it'd be the other way. Yeah.
It goes the other way. So to me, it's just a matter of get in the game, win your game, get out. Then try to rinse and repeat the next one.
Who's your prediction right now? Who's going to take the cup this year?
Well, my cup final is busted because I had Tampa and Colorado, and they both lost in the first round. So I'm drawing, back. Basically, I'm buying back.
Marty.
I'm at the poker table right now, and I lost, and I'm doing a buyback. So in
You're
the
definitely
second
buying
round,
back.
yeah, the buyback's always good. I have Dallas and Vegas advancing, and then I have Florida and Carolina advancing. Am I confident in those? Not really. I think that what we saw at the Edmonton Oilers against Vegas in game one is what the heck? Is Edmonton flipping the table and playing the Vegas style now? They gave up, 14 or 17 shots to the Vegas Golden Knights in the game. Carolina did the same thing to Washington.
I know it. You're right. And
it's crazy.
Well, and it was 2-0 Vegas, and and Edmonton scores 4 straight. And as a fan, that's frustrating. Your team's up 2-0, and the way they scored, I think Mark Stone had 2 quick ones. And it's like, oh, we're gonna fly through this game, and they just stop shooting the puck.
Wow. We saw in Game 7 in the third period of Dallas and Colorado how a game can turn on its head, and this is so far after just a couple of games here, 3 games in the round 2. There has been 13 games this year where the team that was trailing after 2 have won the game. There was 12 in the whole playoffs last year.
Yeah.
The change of leads, the comeback wins. The Edmonton Oilers have won 5 games. 5 come from behind wins.
Every one.
One of them, it's a come from behind wins. I get it. You have McDavid, Draisaitl. You can always come back. But it has been such a story.
It's still rarity. Yeah.
There's always a story.
Let me ask you a couple more things. One is about home ice advantage, which, I thought about this from a fan's perspective. You think about it differently than a player. And here's where I'm going with this. Recently I've interviewed a few players who have given me the reason that home ice advantage is so important. And it's not how loud the crowd is, or people banging on the glass, or even the familiarity with the rink where bounces go. It's that last change. It's who you're bringing out. And I never thought about it from that perspective, but they said the game is changing. And I don't know if anything changed in the rules with this, but, you see McDavid and Draisaitl hop over the boards, right? Well, then you can shift and bring out your one.
Yes.
And I never thought about it like that. And that's got to be crazy important. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy important. It's always been like this. The home team has last change.
Why is it more relevant now then?
What's that?
Why does it seem more relevant now then? Why you know what I mean?
Teams are better with matchups. And there's more of that cat and mouse games that happen. Back in the days, if Mario Lemieux or Wayne Gretzky stepped on the ice, you had one guy that you would say, you're covering that guy. Okay. And they would glue themselves to that person. You can't do that anymore because it's got to be a 5-on-5 type of game. But if you have a line that is really good defensively, look, perfect example, game 1, Oilers, Vegas, 2-0 Vegas. The one shift that Jack Eichel and Mark Stone are not on the ice against McDavid's line, boom, McDavid, Draisaitl line scores, Corey Perry gets a goal. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're like, that's how important matchups were. And it allowed the Oilers to come back. Now,
you're right.
The Oilers scored another goal. Draisaitl scored a goal with Eichel on the ice. But if that door opened up, that's what happens. And so teams that are really good at it, I remember I was with the Rangers and, we played Alex Ovechkin in the playoffs. And it was not so much about who the forwards are going to be against Alex Ovechkin. It was about who do we want on the back end? Who are the defensemen that we want against Alex Ovechkin? And the designated player was Dan Girardi. So Dan Girardi, as soon as he saw Ovi on the ice, he upped the bench. Like he knew we had last change. Now we were in Washington and Dan Girardi would have a shift. He'd come back to the bench and then we'd see Ovi jump on the ice. They tried to avoid the matchup. So that's what it is. Some teams do it much better than others. Some teams are better equipped than others. Some teams are better at it. That's just an experience thing and maybe a game flow thing. The first round of the playoffs, home team won a lot more than the road teams. Yeah. There has been instances where the road team maybe have had some success, but I think the overall rule is if you have the control of the matchups in the playoffs, it gives you an advantage.
It's very, very cerebral insight. It's intelligent to think because it's always been there. There's got to be a reason why and that's what it is. And I think, almost better quality hockey players, right? Like, I mean, your lines are more even now too, right? You'd always have the fourth line was, traditionally you'd just sometimes with some teams, you'd have the goon squad that would come out and they were on there for a reason. Right? And you do see this, they're not drafting and they're not bringing up the guys who are that's not, they don't need that anymore. They need matchups, they need goals and everything else. So they're not bringing out the toughness. So,
And then you're right. Like, there was a time in hockey where your fourth line and was a lot of fighters and you would never see, and no disrespect to Rob Ray and the job that he did, but if Mario Lemieux stepped on the ice, you're like, Razor, get off, right?
Totally,
and Razor says that. He said he had one time he was on the ice with Wayne Gretzky and he's like, I saw him go right by me, right? It's just, that's basically what it is. But now, like I'll use the Sabres roster from last year, for example. If Connor McDavid's on the ice, you'll be okay with having, let's just say, Peyton Krebs, Sam Lafferty, and Beck Mallenstein on the ice. Why? Because they're good players. Like the depth and the amount of good players in the NHL is significant that you can have a third line or a fourth line to be able to do this. The Sabres in the 80s were amazing in the 70s, I should say. With their Danny Gare line, right? Greg Ramsey, Don Luce, Danny Gare. They were the checking line, but they still scored.
They scored a ton.
50 goals a year, but they were a checking line. And why did it give the Sabres advantage? Is because they had a line that would do it
100%
and could go out and check. That was very different back then, and
100%.
They were so successful, and they made it to the finals because of a line like that.
Yeah, no, listen, I can't agree more. I had Danny on the show. I had Rammer on the show, and we talked a lot about that. I certainly, appreciate the time. And I think I can speak for Buffalo. We love you up there. There's always kind of a little bit of a cat and mouse, right? Kind of messing with each other a little bit, man. And I think that the people of Buffalo almost choose a side, it's like, it's funny, but
I
you
hope
guys
I win.
No, man, you do a great job. You really do. You
know what? It's funny because I've always enjoyed doing what I'm doing. And when I was playing, so the year I got traded from Buffalo to Philly, we didn't make the playoffs in Philly. We were last in the league, like the last month of the season. And that year, this guy at TSN, Steve Dryden, called me and was like, do you want to do some, playoff coverage with us? We're bringing in some players. And I went and I really enjoyed it. And then the next year I did it again. And it came like a part of, I want to do this when I'm done. Yeah. I want to be the educator at the same time, the teacher, and saying like, hey, listen, I want to be able to give an opinion and bring energy, but I also want to be able to educate and say, this is what's happening.
Here's why I love that. I have an 11-year-old playing travel hockey. I have 3 boys, and that's what I say to them. When there's intermissions, I don't care, what game it is. That my son's a huge Carolina Hurricanes fan, and we were there a few weeks ago. And I'll tell you what, man, they rock out down there. They were tailgating, awesome. Man. It was awesome.
I hate to say that because they beat us in 06 and all of that. The tailgate around the rink area, the atmosphere inside the building. I hate that Ric Flair. Woo! Because
me too. But I was so shocked. But yes. Like we're rolling up and I see guys tailgate. It looked like a Bills game, and I'm like, this is crazy. But
college town kind of atmosphere.
Yeah,
NC State, awesome.
And that is exactly what you're doing. So I'll say, hey, listen up. Stop beating your brother up and listen up to what he's saying, man. He's making some good points. A couple of fun questions.
I'm happy to be the babysitter during the game night.
Yeah, that's a good role, right? Couple of fun questions, man. What's Marty's favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate peanut butter cup or chocolate peanut butter, whatever. I love Perry's. And but I have to say, Let's Go Buffalo is definitely up there. And I also got to give a shout out to Rosie's, my boy Steve Tasker and his family.
They were just on as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we
how is it?
I mean, had Oreo milk at Rosie's the other night, and man, was that so good.
Wait, milkshake?
No, Oreo milk ice cream. Like that's what it's called, Oreo milk.
Okay.
It kind of is like an Oreo McFlurry or Blizzard or whatever you want to call it, but it's ice cream and it was so good. So yeah, so I'm an ice cream guy, so I have a lot of different flavors I love.
I love it too, man. I just had the Taskers on, Steve and Luke, and I got to get over there because Deacon, I think Deacon and his wife, and that's my son's name as well. And we got to get over there.
Deacon beat me, and so I got to play in our President's Cup at Craigburn the 1 year.
Yeah. And
I was matched up with Deacon, and he absolutely terrorized me. I think the match was over at the 12th hole.
He's got a stick, huh?
Yeah, he was good. I think he was hitting his iron of the tee box. He was striping it down the middle. It was unbelievable. So yeah, Deacon crushed me.
Those Taskers take you by surprise with their athleticism. You know what I mean? Like you look at them and you're like, oh man, you size them up. That's a mistake, man. They're great athletes. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. You know? And I love that family. They're awesome.
Yeah, they're great people. If you could go 100 years in the future or 100 years back, which way would you go and why?
I'd go 100 years in the future. I love the past. I love history. I was terrible in history in high school, by the way, but I love history now. I love to go back, and especially with hockey, and go back, but to be able to see what is going to be in 100 years from now. Like I know what happened 100 years ago. I want to see what happened, what is happening 100 years from now and where we're at. I had a grandma that passed away this past year. She was 94, I believe. So awesome. I'm looking to live in my 80s and 90s and get to 100. So that's what I want to do.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, this was a lot of fun. This was great. Very entertaining. I'm really glad, that you decided to take some time with me, and hopefully we'll keep in touch.
No, absolutely. Good luck with the travel hockey and the boys and everything. I know it's just a start. I only had a boy. I have 3 daughters, but they did equestrian and they still are doing it. So that's crazy. But
you're a great dude. Thanks a lot, man. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye.